Here we go again. Today, we are back for my Week 11 predictions. Last week, we went 9-7. Not as good as the week before. We did go 11-4, but it's hard to replicate that success. So let's just get right into it with the Thursday night football game. This is tomorrow. Some of the stuff we know: no Garrett Wilson for the Jets, no Rhamondre Stevenson for the Patriots, but Henderson looked pretty fucking good. So that's a big factor for me. Obviously, the Pats defense is playing as a top 10 unit as well. The Jets are off 2 wins, surprisingly. This line was actually 10.5 at the beginning of the week, and it's moved all the way to 12-5. My pick in this one, it's hard to not take the Pats. This just seems like a game that I know the division games get a little tricky, but I think the Pats, win this one by, I'm going to say 17. Offensively, they're better, you know, even with Henderson out, or Henderson as RB1, I mean, sorry. Um, Booty's out, but that defense is really the big thing. Justin Fields, I'm not really sure what you're going to be able to create. Brees Hall's your main guy, but then you have Mason Taylor as a rookie as your number two. And Fields' passing line is the lowest thing I've ever seen in my life. I believe he's sitting at 151, which is insane. So yeah, Pat spread is my pick. But division games get tricky, so you never know. Now we've got Miami, Washington. This is in Madrid. This is the first ever game in Madrid. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Now, the Dolphins are coming off a win against Buffalo. The Commanders, they got fucked by Detroit. I believe they lost by 22, I think. Something like that. Um, Now, this is kind of a hard one to call. Oh, what the hell? Weird. So, this one for me, I'm gonna just, I'm not sure about Miami 2.5, but I do think Miami wins this one. You know, I know Tua's got all his problems, but he's just the better quarterback. Mariota's looked like shit. They can't run the ball. Achane, Waddle. Their defense played well against Buffalo, surprisingly. So yeah, I would say Miami wins this one outright. Spread they should cover, but I'm not gonna say that. Now we're moving on. We've got the best game on the 1 o'clock window. Buffalo versus Tampa. Now, Tampa looks lost right now. They really do. They can't put together offensive performances. Their defense is playing okay. The Bills are coming off a bad loss against Miami, but back home they still have a top five pass defense in my opinion. They've been really good, and I think this is a game the Bills win by 10 plus. I just don't think the Bucks are that good. I know the Bills have had their own fair share of problems, but give me Buffalo. I trust Josh Allen to get back on track in that game too. Now we've got the Texans and Titans. Now this is kind of a weird one because you're looking at both these games here. They're both sitting at 6.5. Um, I would, I really want to say Tennessee, but I'm not going to. C.J. Stroud's back. The defense is the best in football. I know Denver's is incredible as well, but you know this is the best unit. D'Amico Ryans has been playing well. The offensive play calling is questionable, but Stroud should be back. Woody Marks is a good game for him. He had a great week last week against the Jags, where he got his most usage of his career too. I believe he's right around 80% snaps. I think the Texans win this game by 10. Um, Tennessee is probably the third worst team I've seen in my lifetime. The Lions that went 0-16 were worse. Not the Commanders. The Browns that lost every game were worse. This team should not have beat Arizona. That was the most fluke win I've ever seen. Yeah, give me Houston. I know it's a division trap, but uh, I'm not going against the gut here. The gut and like the stats, like anything backs them up in all reality. Um, so probably the Titans will win after I say that. So now Green Bay and the Giants. I said this stat before when it was the Titans Pats game where it was like 11-2 against the spread. Against the spread since 2020. Um, I like Green Bay still um, to win this game. Now, if we're talking about the spread, now the thing is, you have Jameis Winston playing. I get that. If it was Russ, I would definitely go with the Packers, and if it was Dart, I'd definitely go with the Giants. Now, Winston's a little weird because every year, he gets a couple games where he gets to start, and shit. Last year he beat Pittsburgh. He almost beat Denver too. He was slinging it, man. I'm gonna take the Giants. I'm gonna go with, you know, the statistic that backs it up, where new teams that fire their coaches the week after, they're very good against the spread historically. Um, yeah, and I like Mike Kafka as the interim coach. He might be calling some good plays. Ugh. Now we've got the Bengals and Steelers. Now we've seen this matchup once before. I was right about it, but I did think the Steelers would win. The Steelers are coming off a loss, of course, and Bengals, they're coming off a bye. Now the Bengals got some big news this week. Joe Burrow, he's trending in the right direction. He'll be back sometime this season. Week 13, week 14. Pick him up in your fantasy leagues too. Um, in this one, I'm just gonna. I really want to say Cincy, but I think this is one of those games that the Steelers just win by 10, 14 points. The Bengals defense cannot cover a nosebleed. Um, it is really bad. I think the Steelers defense just has a better game at home. Uh, I know a lot of the money might be on Cincy after recent Steelers performances, but this is just one of those games that they win comfortably, and it makes them calm down a bit. But in no means is that a team that's ever gonna win. So now we've got the Chargers and Jags. Now I believe this is the first time they're playing since 2023, right? When they won in the playoffs. Oh no, sorry, 2022. Yeah, when the Jags won in the playoffs, that comeback win. Now the Jags, they blew that lead against the Texans, which aggravated me a lot. That's a game they should win. I'm just gonna go out and say I trust the Chargers in this one. This defense is better, the offense is better, the coaching is better all around. Um, and it really matters when your QB, your coach even has confidence in the quarterback. I think Trevor Lawrence is done in Jacksonville. I'm not sure how long he's going to last there. I love Liam Cohen as a coordinator, as a coach. I think he's really good. I just don't think he likes Trevor Lawrence. Um, and T Law is just not. He's going through the motions. He plays a nice game here, then he plays poorly, then nice drive, then three shitty ones. I trust the Chargers. They're a playoff team. The Jags, not really. So I'd love the Jags to make it because they beat the Chiefs. It gives them that tiebreaker as well, but it's just not going to happen, unfortunately. Now, the Bears and Vikings. The Jags could really use a bye week, but I don't. I don't think they've. I don't think you get two. I'm not sure if they've had it actually, but pretty sure they did. Like week 8. The Bears and Vikings is a weird one. Now I'm gonna go out and say, I guarantee most of the money's gonna be on the Bears +3, um, because you're just going off how the Vikings have played lately, how the Bears are trending up. Now the Bears should have lost last week. Any Bears fan know it. Ben Johnson knows it. Caleb Williams knows it. I'm gonna say the Vikings -3. I think the Vikings win. I like them in this game. Um, you know, to move the ball. Now, the Bears' problem, their offense is great. Caleb, Swift, Mungie, Rome, DJ Moore, Loveland, Luther. Even Zacchaeus has been decent. But on defense, they have a real problem. They cannot attack the quarterback. They cannot, guard in the secondary. They were getting cooked by Slade, and they were getting cooked by, Eo Savis and Mason Tinsley, who were scoring touchdowns against them. That shit is just, you got to take note of that. I think this is a game, the Vikings have the better defense. I'm not, they probably have just the better team all around. They're a bit underperforming. Obviously, JJ's been better, but he needs to be the factor. We saw him once in this matchup already where he came up big, and he's the reason they won that game week 1. I think the Vikings sweep them, so, on the season. Now we're moving on. Probably two of the most, I couldn't even speak. Two of the most annoying teams in the NFL. The Panthers and the Falcons. Now the Panthers, I every week I cannot tell, are they a good team? Are they a bad team? They'll win a game. I'll be like, oh, they look better. I'm starting to believe in Bryce. Then last week against the Saints, who, they're not a horrible. Kellen Moore's a really good coach, but that roster's pretty bad, man. Now, yeah, I want the Panthers to be good so bad. Every other week, we see them, win, win by little, maybe win comfortably. Obviously, they won this matchup earlier in the year, 30-0, but the Panthers, they beat the Packers. So I'm like, okay, maybe they're decent, maybe they're a playoff team. Then they lose to the Saints. The Saints are a well-coached team, but that roster is horrible. It's close to the Titans bad. I mean, that's just not a game you could lose. And then you move over to Atlanta, who's lost 4 in a row. They don't even have their own first-round pick. Penix, questionable. I mean, their coach, every week I come on here and I fucking trash him because I think he's such a dog shit coach. I think their OC was a horrible coach. Zach Robinson is just not built for it. But that being said, I think this is a game the Falcons win and cover. This spread is over 3, which is interesting because they think they'll win. Vegas puts them at over a field goal. I think this is a game. The Falcons just win when most of the money's going to be on the Panthers, even though they lost to New Orleans. I guarantee most of the money at the end of the week is going to be on Carolina because people go off record, people go off, wins. Um, yeah, and division games are the most unpredictable in the sport. We saw it last week. The Saints win, right? Who thought that was going to happen? I mean, let's see. Who else? The Raiders played the Broncos close. Not many people had that happening either. The Jags, they choke a 19-point lead. Miami beats the Bills. Not many people, think about this shit. Now, this one's hard. The Cardinals and Niners. I think this is an upset game. I do think this is a game the Cardinals win and cover. This is going to be my upset pick of the week. Now, it's interesting to note that this line went down after Marvin Harrison Jr. was ruled out with an injury. Now, again, we have the same issue as the last 2 weeks where we don't know who's playing quarterback for the Niners. Now, Mac Jones has definitely been better, but the team is kind of just going through the motions. They don't really look like a playoff team. They have too many injuries on defense. They obviously got, demolished last week. But, I think the Cardinals offense just looks a little bit better. I know CMC's been good, but, the Cardinals defense, I know they started really bad, but the second half they played really well. I like Jonathan Gannon. I like, their usage with Brissett and, how much they're peppering McBride. I just think this line, if it's with Kyler, I wouldn't pick the Cardinals, but with Brissett, the way he's playing, I would. It's unbelievable to even say that after how bad Brissett was in New England last year too. So I'm gonna rock with the Cardinals to win and cover. I think this is just one of those division trap games where you just don't expect it. Oh, I skipped one too. Whoops. All right, Rams and Seahawks. I'm gonna go out and say the Rams. Every week I pick against. It's this one's hard because I really do every week pick against the Rams, but the Seahawks have all those stats. Mike McDonald on the road, I believe, has won 10 games in a row. But this is a division game. This is against probably a top 4 MVP candidate. I think this is a game the Rams win by 7, maybe. It won't be comfortable, but I think it'll be right around a touchdown, maybe like 6. I'm not trying to make the joke. Every time I say it, I think I'm gonna make the joke. 6, 7 points. So yeah, I think the Rams. I think that's their game. Can I really not scroll? Whatever. Game of the week. The game of the fucking week. My team takes on the Chiefs. Now, we're 8-2. The Chiefs are 5-4. We've got a couple problems to go over first. Now, Kansas City, I don't think Pacheco's going to play, which is a big loss because, you could say all you want, he doesn't look like the same player and whatnot, but the team itself, if you look when Hunt's in there, like last week against, whatever, not last week, but their last game against the Bills, they look so bad. Because you can't even start to establish a run with Kareem Hunt at 31 because he's just not a good player. Now, same with the Broncos. The Broncos, they're top 5 in rush yards with J.K. Dobbins. Now, J.K. Dobbins probably out. He might go on IR. This is kind of the hard game to call. I think Marvin Mims is going to be back. Pat Surtain, I don't think is going to play. I don't want to be. I'm really trying not to be biased with this pick, but I do think just because of the defense, and I like the Chiefs, like the Broncos' pass defense is so elite, and the Chiefs, can't run the ball. Like sometimes we've seen it where the Broncos struggle against the run, the Chiefs don't have that player. Brashard Smith is not good. Kareem Hunt is 31. He's not the player. I mean, they might run the ball with Mahomes better than, with those two, and they have all year. So, I think this is a game the Broncos make close. Do they win? I'm going to say no. I think the Broncos lose on a field goal. Either way. Either we miss or they miss. Either we miss or they make it. I just think this is, we've won 7 in a row, but the Chiefs is hard to get over because that's the team to beat. Like I said in the mock draft, if you want to win a Super Bowl, there's one team you have to beat every single year. It's the Chiefs. If you can't beat the Chiefs, then you have no chance. You got to beat the champs to win it. All right, moving on. Ravens Browns. See, at the time of this video, I have no idea who's playing quarterback for the Ravens. I'm going to assume it's Lamar, based on you know I know based on just most likely outcome. I think he'll practice tomorrow. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but if Huntley's the starter, I'm gonna pick. I'd say the Browns spread if it drops. Um, I'd be comfortable with the Browns down to 7 if Huntley's a player. If it's lower than that, then I wouldn't be comfortable because Gabriel's just not good. But Lamar in. I'm gonna assume that he's playing. I think this is a game the Ravens win by 2 TDs. This team is just they're starting to get it together. They beat Miami. I know, not a great team. They beat the Bears. That's a playoff team. That was with Huntley. And now, they beat, last week, they beat the Vikings. And that's a really good defense. That's a good win, regardless. Now, they play another elite defense, but the Browns really can't move the ball. Judkins, not a great matchup. But, Gabriel, could do his thing. He has the matchup ability. Marlon Humphrey not playing either. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just going to go with the team that's hot right now. I think this hard for me to imagine the Browns make that close with how bad their offense looks. They just can't really move the ball. But, it all depends on, how Gabriel plays, right? Now, this is probably the game. I didn't even know the Bills-Texans was Thursday Night Football next week. And then it's Thanksgiving the week after. So, Lions-Eagles. Oh, brother. This is a hard one to tell. With how good the Lions look and how the Eagles kind of just not doing a lot for me right now. I'm going to pick the Lions. I absolutely loved seeing Dan Campbell call plays last week. It was a refreshing sight to see like a Ben Johnson type play caller. I really like Detroit offensively. Their defenses look good. I know their corners struggle a good amount, but I just think they could do enough in this game to win it. I would be comfortable with either them winning or the spread. You want to be the champs. You got to beat the champs, and this is a big game for the seeding. I just the Eagles offense just not doing a lot right now. So it's that kind of plays into my thinking. Last game, Dallas, Las Vegas. Now this is a hard one, honestly, because you could go either way. Now, Dallas's offense is really good, and the Raiders' offense is really bad. God, I think Dallas wins, but I'm gonna pick the Raiders. And now I said this before with the Jags game. They play better at home. I know like the Chargers game, it wasn't close, but besides that, like every game they played at home, has been a lot closer. And I don't think I think they have players. Obviously, Geno's a shit can. They have Genty, Bowers, Mayer. Trey Tucker's a good player. Shout out Jack Beck, but he might not be the greatest player. But that defense is really good. If they had a quarterback in there, like I said in my mock too, I really think Dante Moore would fit well in that team. I don't think they have the right OC, but to call plays. But I think I'd pick the Raiders. Dallas just they don't have the defense, man. I know they got Quinnen Williams, and that's a cool addition, but I just don't. I'm not sure this is a game they win comfortably. This is probably a game that goes over, and it's a shootout. So even with Geno Smith, so. Yeah, that's all I got this week. So let me know what y'all think, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.